Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so if you're learning English, you probably already know that stepping into a restaurant or even just a busy coffee shop can sometimes feel, well, like walking onto a stage without a script. You know the vocabulary in theory, right? But the second the pressure is on, poof, it all vanishes. Well, don't worry, because today we're going to completely demystify the entire restaurant experience. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have the exact phrases, the cultural rules, and the competence to order like a pro literally anywhere in the world. Be totally honest with me for a second. Have you ever stood in a shrinking line at a cafe, completely frozen up, and felt your mind go entirely blank the exact second the barista looks at you and asks what you want? If that feeling sounds familiar, trust me, you are in very good company. It's actually one of the first real-world tests every language learner faces. But here's the secret to getting over that anxiety. Ordering food is really just a simple, highly predictable script. And once you know the script, you just fill in the blanks. All right, let's dive into this and look at our agenda. First up, the universal script. Second, the politeness trap. Third, fast food to fine dining. Fourth, customizing and fixing problems. And finally, number 5, the bill and tipping. So let's get right into section 1, the universal script, the 4 stages of ordering. We're going to reveal the secret framework behind almost every single food order you will ever make. Seriously, whether you're standing in front of a food trunk or sitting down at a Michelin star fine dining spot, it's basically the same. Here's the big takeaway. Memorizing hundreds of random restaurant phrases from a textbook is completely exhausting and honestly totally unnecessary. Instead, just recognize the simple 4-step pattern. Stage 1, a quick greeting. Stage 2 is ordering what you want. Stage 3 involves the server asking a clarifying question, something like for here or to go. And stage 4 is paying and saying thanks. Recognizing this structure completely removes the anxiety of ordering, because when you know exactly what the server is going to do next, a fast-talking barista suddenly stops being so scary. Moving right along to section 2, the politeness trap, how to ask. Now, in English culture, how you ask for something is often way more important than what you're actually asking for. It's so easy to accidentally fall into what we call the politeness trap. This right here brilliantly illustrates the difference between textbook English and the polite, natural phrasing native speakers actually use. Think about the phrase, I want the pasta. It's perfectly grammatical. You probably learned it on day 1 of English class. But in a service setting, it lands as blunt, demanding, and honestly, maybe a little childish. Native speakers almost never order that way. Instead, they soften their requests. Just upgrading from I want to I'd like or I'll have instantly transforms your order from demanding to polished and natural. Notice the phrase, could I? This is a fantastic polite question because it technically asks if something is possible rather than just demanding it. And then there is the absolute magic word, please. Adding please does all the heavy lifting to make literally any request sound friendly. If you just remember to soften your verbs and add please and thank you, you are going to navigate that politeness trap perfectly every single time. Okay, section 3, fast food to fine dining, adapting your vocabulary. So when you visit a fast-moving counter service, like a major coffee chain, you've probably encountered these highly confusing sizes. They use these Italian-inspired words that confuse even native speakers, to be honest. A tall is actually the small. A grande, which literally means large in Italian, is their medium. And a venti just means 20 in Italian, representing a 20-ounce drink. But here's the really great news. You don't actually have to use these words. You can still just ask for a small, medium, or large, almost anywhere, and they'll know exactly what you mean. Now, let's shift your mindset a bit and imagine we're walking into a nice sit-down restaurant. The host greets you right at the door. If you booked ahead, this is where you'd run through a simple little role play. You'd walk up confidently and say something like, "Hi, I have a reservation for 1 under Frost." See? It sets a polite, organized tone for the rest of the meal. Once you sit down, you're faced with a table setting, which brings us to the word cutlery. That's all the metal tools you eat with. Our sources shared this hilarious anecdote about a guy named Tom. So Tom took his wife out for a very fancy anniversary dinner at this beautiful Italian restaurant. He sat down, looked at the table, and completely panicked because there were 4 forks next to his plate. He actually had to secretly pull out his phone and Google the cutlery rules under the table while his wife wasn't looking. By the way, for the record, the rule is to just start from the outside fork and work your way in. But poor Tom's struggles didn't end with the cutlery. When the waiter came over and asked how he wanted his steak cooked, Tom totally forgot the vocabulary. Instead of asking for it rare, medium, or well done, he just awkwardly looked at the waiter and ordered his steak, quote, not too red, but also not too dry. The waiter just smiled and politely translated for him, saying, medium, sir? Don't be like Tom. Memorize these terms so you never have to ask for a not too red steak. Now, what's really empowering here is how you can completely elevate your dining conversation. When the server comes back and asks, how is everything? We want to move beyond just saying the food is good. If the soup is incredible, call it flavorful. If you're eating a heavy, creamy truffle pasta, describe it as rich. And if something is missing salt and just tastes like warm water with vegetable memories, you can say it's bland. Using these vivid adjectives makes your English sound incredibly natural. Let's move to section 4, customizing and fixing problems, speaking up. All right, let's talk about those absolutely crucial moments where things either go wrong or you just need to change something. A lot of learners feel way too shy to speak up because they just don't want to be a bother. But you need to know that restaurant kitchens customize orders constantly. It is completely normal. And this is especially true when it comes to dietary restrictions and allergies. Now, for allergies, you actually must drop the soft, polite phrasing we talked about earlier. You need to be direct because this is about safety. Saying the word allergy out loud, like I have a severe nut allergy, signals to the kitchen that this is a health issue, not just a preference. They'll often change gloves and double-check ingredients to keep you safe. So remember, clarity beats politeness every single time in this scenario. For less serious changes, it's incredibly easy to customize an order without getting any judgment from the server. You can ask for a dressing on the side, which just means it comes in a separate little dish so you can control the amount. Or you can use the word substitute, which means replacing one thing with another. Simply asking, could I substitute the fries for a salad, please, is a totally standard, everyday request. And what if they bring you the wrong dish or the food is cold? You just need a soft opener followed by a clear, calm request. Think of it like a polite role play. You wave the server over, make eye contact, and say, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think my steak is undercooked. Could you put it back on for a few minutes? Staying calm and framing it clearly like that practically guarantees the restaurant will gladly fix it for you. And finally, section 5, the bill and tipping, cultural realities. Okay, so we're now entering the very end of the meal. And believe it or not, this is the exact moment where many otherwise confident travelers and English speakers get completely tripped up by invisible cultural rules. There's a cultural reality here that honestly shocks a lot of visitors. In places like the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia, your server usually will not bring the check to your table until you explicitly ask for it. Sitting at the table chatting for 30 minutes after you finish eating is perfectly normal and definitely not considered rude. So if you're ready to leave, you actually have to actively make eye contact and ask, could we get the check, please? Now, if you're eating with friends, you're going to need the vocabulary to figure out who is paying. You can ask the waiter for separate checks so everyone pays for their own meal. If you want to divide one check evenly, you can say, let's split the bill down the middle. Or if you're feeling generous and want to treat your friends, you can just grab the check and confidently say, it's on me. Finally, the biggest cultural minefield of them all, tipping. So the crucial point here is that tipping rules swing wildly depending on what country you are standing in. In the US and Canada, a 15 to 20% tip is strongly expected. It's essentially mandatory for sit-down service. Over in the UK, it's lower, and you always need to check if a service charge is already included on the bill so you don't accidentally tip twice. But, and this is a big but, if you try to leave a 20% tip in Japan or China, it can actually be seen as incredibly rude, so always check the local customs. Well, there you have it. We've covered the universal script, the absolute magic of the word please, dealing with 4 forks and navigating the check. But you know, the only way to close that gap between knowing these words and actually saying them in real life is to practice. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to get you speaking right now. Think of your absolute favorite restaurant food. What is it? And how would you vividly describe it to a server using the words we learned today? Rehearse your answer out loud right now, and you'll be perfectly prepared for your next great dining adventure. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.